Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie. Next to me is the Burton Grill Master. Next to that is the Power Wagon and the Flight Attendant. I rode this with Union Atlas and Ride Fuse, but I also used Burton Cartel X's. I got this in a wide variety of conditions, everything from some decent powder to some good groomers. I rode this several days and compared it often against the Power Wagon, the Flight Attendant, Jones Stratos, and many others, so I could really get a feel of how this sits on the spectrum, but I also just rode it myself to get used to it. The 155 fit me better than I thought it would for my specs. I still was a little bit on the heavy side and it felt a touch small. I wanted to try the 160, but they didn't have one. One thing to note though is when you go from 155 to 60, not only is it a lot longer, but the recommended weight range goes way up along with the waist width. I go from being 5 pounds too heavy for the 155 to just barely making the minimum recommended weight range for the 160. So I won't know until I try, but if this is like the Power Wagon 160, it might just be a little too burly for me to control with my boot size and being at the lower end of the recommended weight range. When it comes to the shape, this is pretty tapered and directional. You can see it's got a much bigger nose than tail. It's got 15 mil of taper. In comparison to the Hometown Hero at 12 mil, it's a good bit more. Millimeters matter in snowboarding. Compared to the Flight Attendant, I think that's at 10 mil, so a lot more taper than that. Power Wagon's only like 5 mil, so not much there. So this definitely has a much more tapered directional feel, but Burton really knows how to make that side cut so it doesn't feel tapered on groomers, but still gives you that tapered, directional, easier turning float in powder. When it comes to the camber profile, lots of camber from the tail all the way past this front insert here, then going into a little bit of early rise before a long nose. So it feels pretty locked in, pretty technical, but really stable, great for one footing and flat basing, just not the easiest to skid a turn for a beginner intermediate rider. So when it comes to flex here, you have a pretty medium stiff flex between the feet, but then when you get down in the tail, there's a little bit more give, not a lot, but a little bit more give, especially at the end where you want to butter, and then the nose a little softer. So the overall flex is like medium stiff, and it's got a really good pop and energy back. I just love this flex. It was so easy for an average rider like myself to access it. It was easy to butter off the tail. It was very easy to butter off the nose. And I just had a good time popping this board. It just really is lively and energetic. When you're talking about how this poppy dynamic ride handles uneven terrain, it did such a good job. I was so impressed with how it didn't buck and bounce around too much, especially for me being a little bit on the heavy side for this. And so I thought it would buck and bounce me around in uneven snow, and it didn't. I think this just handles all day riding really well. Didn't really get it on too much hard micro bumpy snow, but what I did, it did pretty well. The base glide on this is good, but not great. It came pretty well waxed. I gave it a very quick wax job just to see if it would help, and it did. But this is the kind of base that you might want to put a little extra time into waxing it. Use the highest end wax from Burton you can get. I think that would help this a lot. But overall, it's not like that legendary Burton base glide of old, or like the base glide I had on my straight shooter. As far as speed goes though, and pointing it, it's damp enough to point it here and there. But if you want to step it up, you want to go to the Power Wagon, or you want to go to the Flight Attendant, or you want to go to the Hometown Hero. Those, I think, handled a straight line a little better. So edge hold, Burton's just never really impressed me in gripping in hard to icy snow. I don't think that's its real strong point. There are mini boards out there with slightly disrupted side cuts that do a lot better when it comes to hard to icy snow. Burton boards just let go on me pretty easy. Even if I tune it up and get the edges is really sharp. It helps, but it makes the board so much more catchy and still doesn't get it to that next level that I want it at, that it's not worth it to me. I just like these boards better in good conditions. When it comes to turn initiation, pretty quick, medium fast. It was really easy for me to initiate a turn. Even with the mellower Cartel X in comparison to my Union Atlas, it just turned fine. When I got it on edge, the side cut was very turny and very fun, but not being too turny, just more on the turny side of balance. I thought this did a great job all around. I loved this turning experience, and I loved the pop and the spring out of the turn. So when it comes to powder, this tapered directional shape with this bigger nose, smaller tail, 15 mil taper, and 3.75 inches back with a 23-inch stance width if you set it all the way back to the last markings in the channel. Now 23 is pretty wide for somebody who rides at a 21.5-inch stance width. So I couldn't get all of that setback. I did cheat and slide a little further down when I was on my Union Atlas because you get more of the channel for setback, which actually can help on those super deep days. It also works better with Cartel X Reflex versus Cartel X EST, but even not setting it all the way back. And then the next time around, cheating a little bit to get it further back. This thing just floated really well. Riding switch, hitting the park, you can with this. I was surprised at how well it rode switched for 15 mil of taper. And again, they're doing just cool shit with this balanced free ride geometry side cut. It makes the board feel more like a twin than you would think for how tapered it is. It still doesn't feel like a twin, but it was definitely fun to ride switch and play around with. I would hit a kicker or two and go into a soft pipe, no problem. Might even want to hit a mellow box with this, but I didn't. So overall, I really enjoyed this Burton Gril Master, but it's going to be hard to recommend because of the massive gaps between sizes when it comes to length, width, and recommended weight range. There will be a lot of people like me who are just in between sizes, but if you fit one of these sizes really well, this is going to be a great board.